I just want to say hello to everyone. I know that we've just gone live on LinkedIn now. Um, the link to join us is in the event. So if you do want to join us live and you're not actually here, go and click on that link now, and you can come and join us in the room. Michael will be here. He's going to answer all the questions that come up in the room, but we cannot, unfortunately, answer LinkedIn questions and ones that come up in the chat in this event because it's too much. So, but please feel free, if you have any questions, come and join us on the LinkedIn, and then he is very happy to answer those questions. So I'm going to say thank you very much to everyone for coming. I'm sitting down today with Michael J. Jordan. I don't know, do you play basketball?
Oh, I've never heard that one before.
I'm
In
sure.
40 years. That's why I include my middle initial, of course.
So you're an award-winning storytelling strategist, foreign correspondent, communication coach. So we are here to explore how professionals can build strong personal brand, which in this day and age is just so important, and how you can demonstrate how that you're a thought leader in your industry. So whether you're trying to stand out in your company, gain visibility in your field, or attract exciting new possibilities, this interview is here for you. So I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that introduction, Michael, but please feel free to let us know a little bit about yourself.
Well, sure. I suppose this is my quick elevator pitch.
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, I've been fortunate enough to have lived on four continents. I started out as a young freelance foreign correspondent and international journalist living in Budapest, Hungary for 6 years. I continued with that, moved back to New York, then returned to Central Europe to Slovakia, where then I also branched into academia as a visiting professor of international journalism, teaching at Slovak and Czech universities, teaching international storytelling, international journalism. Also, then I married, and we had a couple of children. I followed my wife, my then wife, to Southern Africa for her job with the United Nations. And and so we lived in Southern Africa for 4 years in the tiny African kingdom of Lesotho. And it was actually there that then when I saw how dramatic the situation was in terms of health and development, Lesotho at the time was suffering from the world's third highest rate of HIV infection and 40% malnutrition of all its toddlers. And I was very much inspired by what all the other expatriates were doing there. So then I began to apply all my international journalism skills, strategies, and storytelling to global communications, specifically health and HIV communications. And so that's when I first began to develop a methodology of applying that to organizations and then even individuals, how to spotlight what different organizations and individuals were doing, but how to prove their impact on the ground. And that continued when we then moved to Beijing, China for 5 years, where then I applied all that to various environmental protection, workers' rights, food safety. I did a number of communications consultancies, but also began working with a range of Chinese on their own brand building in English through LinkedIn and other platforms. And now that I'm back in New York, I'm focusing on, and we'll talk about this today. When I came back to New York, especially as a middle-aged man, a mid-career professional, I had to think through as well my own brand. Who am I? What am I looking for and why? But specifically, what is my comparative advantage? How do I compare with my peers, with my competition? How do I stand out? And so I'm not an economist, but I use these economic terms of comparative advantage and would encourage you to think through how exactly do I stand out, and then also value added. What do I bring into the conference room? Okay. What again, what makes me stand out? What makes me unique? What makes me valuable? And so then I even began to think through like, okay, very few Americans have been fortunate enough to have lived on four continents. Okay. And this also happens to be my passion. So it coincided nicely with being a global communications specialist and consultant, okay, on the one hand, but then also enjoying working with individual professionals, whether it was from university students to mid-career and higher level professionals, how to build your brand, how to climb the career ladder, but also how to develop your thought leadership, and often using myself even as an example, not just to wag my finger and say, do this and do that, but even to follow my example as to how I do that. Yeah, and also to let you know, and I'll talk about this throughout our session, is whatever you say you've done, whatever you say you can do, the need for evidence to prove that. Okay, so then step by step, here I am in my New York City home office, only claiming to be a global communications specialist. Anyone could say something like that. Okay.
True.
But do you have the proof? Do you have some sort of evidence to prove that you are who you say you are and actually doing what you claim to be doing? Okay. And so that's why nowadays, whatever I do of value that aligns with my short-term and long-term objectives, I document it, okay, on LinkedIn and on my website, both in terms of text, I write about it, but especially even visual evidence. Okay, so don't be surprised if from today's session, I take a screenshot of actual evidence. If I say that I was interviewed about executive coaching, you can guarantee that I will then be proving that more than words, providing some actual evidence. And I call it concrete, meaning specific evidence, credible, meaning believable, and even verifiable. Okay, that you can then click on something. Maybe there's a hyperlink, or then you can see the image of Joanne and I and the rest of you having this conversation.
That was a great elevator pitch.
Oh, so we're done.
Well, yeah,
I'm
we're
out
done.
of
We're done. Thank you very much for joining us.
here.
With this just in mind, I was just going to say I love speaking to professionals about what they love to do and what their area of expertise is, because the information and the golden nuggets just flow, and so I love that. With this in mind, I would encourage any of you that are in the Zoom room, please feel free to make use of the chat. Michael, as you've already had a little droplet of, he's an expert in his field of personal branding and thought leadership. So feel free to ask any questions, and he will answer them as we go along. There will be some time at the end where the people in the room get to answer questions on a personal basis. So if you want to come and join the room, click on the link and come and enjoy the fun. Okay, so I want to know, what's the biggest myth that people believe about building a personal brand?
Oh, the biggest
Oh.
myth. Oh, you threw me a curveball right out of the
Let's not
gate
put
there.
curveballs.
Well, let's see. What's the biggest myth? Is it a myth that it's easy to do? It's not so easy to do. It's a methodical process, step by step. I would say rather than myth, I would say, that it is a serious investment of time and effort, but it's never too late. That's for sure. Okay. That even from today, even if for some reason you were to talk about one of your great strengths is your desire to keep learning, let's say, okay, even to document, I was at this event today. Okay, or I attended a training, I attended a workshop, I have a certificate from something that if that were one of your core messages, that I'm constantly learning and improving my own personal development skills, so I would be open for this position, that position, because I have an appetite for learning, even, thinking through what is evidence and the process for building up our brands. But to Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's really interesting because I think people think of personal brand as something ethereal, but it is basically showing who you are in a very practical way. I mean, you talk about the need for evidence. Why
Yes,
is that such an important part of the brand building process?
yes.
Why should we take photos of this session and say, I attended it? What does that do?
Great. Thank you for asking that. Um, just to clarify that we're I guess one myth, just to go back for 1 second, okay? Maybe some of you sitting there may be thinking, well, I'm not really a brand. Do I want to dive into the brand building game? And actually, whether we realize it or not, we are all a brand in our own way, okay? We are all selling something. We are all a product, okay? Or a service in terms of what we do. We're a little widget in the cog of life itself, okay? Especially if we're looking to earn some money and be compensated for what we do and what we want to do. And so the reason why evidence is so important is because I realize now more than ever, especially with social media, as you all know, every day we're being bombarded by messages from brands, from companies, from organizations, from government agencies, from individuals. Everyone is bombarding us in this sea of brands. And guess what? All of them are claiming to be outstanding, excellent, wonderful. It would be very rare to come across any brand that would say, we're quite mediocre at what we do, but trust us anyway or invest us. What's that?
I said we're a bit rubbish. The customer service is
Yeah.
absolutely appalling, but
No. That's right. So they all have a self-interest. We have a self-interest to
yeah,
promote only the best of what we are and who we are, that sort of thing. So then we also have to recognize, as you know, that there are a lot of liars and scammers out there. There's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, PR, and we all need to, is this an adult channel? We all need to develop a BS deflector.
yeah,
Okay?
yeah,
Right? Because it's flying at us fast and furiously every day. Okay. So, on the one hand, we need to hone our skills of media literacy when we're consuming content. Okay. But then when we become the content creators with our own content, all right, now we have some empathy, that now we're imagining, hey, there's a lot of BS floating out there. I want to prove that I am who I say I am,
yeah.
that uh, I see these as the top three challenges for any of us in the LinkedIn space or any social media platform. Okay. Because again, we know, and on LinkedIn, every day, literally every day, I'm approached by at least one scammy feeling sort of person, if they're really a person versus a bot of some sort. Okay. So to prove that we are who we say we are, okay, and I'll talk about what is evidence of that, okay, to prove that we are who we say we are, that we're actually doing what we say we're doing, okay, only claiming to be saying that we're doing this. And third, and this is the most challenging, is to prove that we are as good as we claim to be, as good at whatever it is. How can we prove that we are as good as we claim to be? Okay. And there are different forms. Again, I describe one as essential proof. Essential proof. Okay. Again, if I were, Joanne had a very nice introduction of me, right? Some nice praiseworthy words. But if you just saw me on LinkedIn and I say I'm an executive coach, okay, you're not going to buy that, okay, in all likelihood, okay. Actually, I described that there are two general audiences in the world today. One thing that I've learned from being fortunate enough to have lived on 4 continents is, in general, there are two audiences. The first is sheep-like. With all due respect to sheep-like folks out there, and they may be our family, they may be our friends, okay, who follow blindly. Okay, whether it's this telephone, this iPhone saying we're the best, or if it's a political leader saying I'm going to make my country great again. We don't need to get
Ooh,
into that, of course.
there's a little bit
Okay.
of politics thrown in there.
I'm just saying does this person have evidence to prove real results, real impact, that they are as good as they claim to be? That if they, again, if you say we are number one, what sort of evidence do you have? So there are the sheep-like audience will follow blindly. Okay. It could be a charismatic pitch, a charismatic leader. I like him. I trust him. I will buy. I will follow. Okay. I don't consider that to be a sustainable business model, right? Fool me once, fool me twice, that sort of thing. That the second audience are the critical thinkers. Okay. It's a more elite audience. Okay. A critical thinking audience, employers, okay, investors, donors, any sort of potential partner, potential client, okay, whomever it may be, that is a critical thinking audience. Okay, they have a finely tuned bullshit BS deflector, and the reason is because they're about to take a risk. If they're going to hire you, if they're going to invest in you, if they're going to donate to you or form any sort of partnership, they're going to have to take a chance on you. Okay. And so evidence is the most essential element to lowering, as I say, there's a wall of suspicion or at least skepticism between strangers. There's always a wall. If I walk on the street later this afternoon and someone approaches me with a with a sign-in sheet or some sort of document, excuse me, sir, do you have a moment, please? Hey, are you trying to rip me off for some reason? Okay, how can that person lower that wall of suspicion, if not at least skepticism, build a bridge of trust to start to earn my trust, okay? And then to reduce the risk of potential partnership. And I believe that the only way to do that is with a steady drumbeat with sufficient evidence. Okay. And as I said before, I always say concrete, credible, even verifiable evidence, because when I think about my target audience over the years, whether it was as a newspaper reporter writing stories for newspapers and magazines from 30 different countries I've been fortunate to report from, I always recognized that my audience was a smart, curious, but skeptical audience. I had to prove that whatever I was reporting from this country over here for an audience over there was really happening. Or if I said there's this disturbing trend or positive pattern going on, I had to prove it with evidence. And so now I apply that today to overcome that skepticism that we all face, which is actually healthier. It's healthy for us because it forces us to raise our game and like, hey, I want to prove that I'm doing what I say I'm doing, that I'm as good as I claim to be. So evidence is the key to all of that, Joanne.
So when we're looking at the elements
Yeah.
of a strong personal brand, I mean, imagine
Yeah.
someone, one of our amazing people here that might be on LinkedIn or they might be developing their own business. What are the essential elements then for a strong personal brand?
I would say it's essentially two things, okay? Because even in preparation of this, I was watching a couple videos, listening to some experts talking about how to build a personal brand, and they were focusing on it's about your reputation. Largely, they were saying it's about reputation, and what I didn't hear was, well, how does one build up a reputation? Well, it's one thing if you know someone face to face, but again, through LinkedIn, you're approached or you approach someone or through word of mouth. Again, I'm looking for evidence as at the heart of. Okay, so on the one hand, the concrete, credible evidence, I believe, is the only thing that can touch the mind of a skeptic. Okay, is that credible evidence where then there's like, okay, that's a persuasive argument that you're making, convince me. But the second part, I believe, is the humanizing. Okay, so because we are all, let's say LinkedIn, we're just a photo on a page, okay, a little portrait and what have you. And so then you have the evidence to touch the mind of a skeptic, and then some humanizing content, okay, such as, for example, talking about your inspirations for doing something, your motivations for why you care so much, your passions,
Yeah.
okay, right? Even to talk about your commitment and why you're so committed or dedicated to this cause or this topic. Even I'm working with one client where I'm saying, even to express somehow your competence in decision making, that you can say, first I did this, comma, because, not just first I did this, then I did that, then I did, but even to explain your trajectory, okay, to explain your decision-making process. She happened to have built up a business, so I said there's value to showing how the sausage was made, how you created this, okay? If you're looking, and why? If you're looking to impress potential partners. Oh, I like her inspirations and motivations. I like her passion and commitment to follow through, not just today, but in the future. And I like her competence in her decision making. Okay. And then step by step, it again lowers the wall of skepticism, builds that bridge of trust, of trustworthiness. And that's ultimately
Okay.
the key.
Yeah, people still do business with people. And I think that we do focus on demonstrating our expertise and everything else. But at the end of the day, we are just people with hands and legs. And, everybody wants to spend time with their family and going to the sea, whatever you want to do. And so, yeah, I really like that. The fact that you have to bring the personal touch. What is it about you that what drives you? What drives,
Yes.
then people can
And
really connect with that.
absolutely. And Joanne, I also I describe it also as a lawyerly argument. Okay, it's as if we are a lawyer entering a courtroom. Okay, and again, and who's the judge and jury? It could be the employer, it could be an investor, it could be a donor, or sometimes I work with high school students sometimes on their university applications. Okay, and so the judge and jury could be an admissions officer for some program you're applying for, okay? Right? And they are smart but skeptical, okay? So then as a lawyer, you wouldn't just go in, Your Honor, my client is innocent. What? You don't trust my face? It's not enough to trust me? No, okay? Any lawyer worth their salt would then come in with, Your Honor, my client is innocent. Here's Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C. And those are the credible pieces of evidence to win your argument.
Hmm.
Okay. So that's why, as part of the brand building process, if I may explain a bit too, is even where to begin. The idea of one thing I encourage my clients to do is to think through, to first of all, to think through your short-term and long-term objectives. Where do I want to go from here and why? Okay. Now, it's one thing if you're completely delusional and you say, I want to be an astronaut or I want to be a World Cup a football star or something like that, versus, no, no, no. I want to get here in a year, 5 years, that sort of thing. Okay. You plot a realistic path, but then you think through what evidence do I have already to prove? Let me think through what skills and expertise and knowledge would I need to have to achieve that or to be hired for a position like that? Do I have any? Well, yes, I've done this, I've done that. Can you unearth that? Okay. And then illuminate that. Can you bring that evidence from your past to light and somehow be able to write about it, that then to be able to post about it, to create a piece of evidence that then when you say, oh, I've done this, I've done that, it's more than just your CV. You
Yeah.
can provide them with a link to the time you wrote about your expertise,
Mm.
your skill in this or that, your passion for this or that sort of thing, right? So then on the one hand, to when you identify your long-term goals, you can think through what evidence do I have already and have I sufficiently illuminated that, brought that to light? Okay, I need to start to methodically do that. I haven't done it well enough. Now, what am I missing? Two, okay, I've thought through what that person down the road, that investor, donor, employer would be looking for. Even empathetically, one of the most important skills here is empathy, to imagine yourself in the shoes of your target audience. I have an objective, but it's not just me, me, me. You got to be thinking about from their perspective, what are they looking for and why that? How can I match up who I am, what I am with what they're looking for, more than just words, but with evidence. Okay. And so then I encourage people, starting now, maybe at least once a month, some sort of post that then in the future can be a link. Okay, where that I've done X, Y, Z, hyperlink, hyperlink, hyperlink. Okay. And
Yeah.
frankly, from my perspective, I tend to hyperlink the hell out of my whatever I do. Whenever I say I've done this and that, I hyperlink to it because it's like, hey, I'm not assuming that you're going to take my word for it, but that you're going to click on something. And I want to prove trustworthy enough that when Michael says something, he means it. He produces evidence to prove that.
Perfect. You're kind of answering my questions. I
Sorry.
I'm kind of skipping along my questions. That's like, okay. So I wanted to, we've talked quite a lot about personal branding, and
Yeah.
I kind of would really like to talk a little bit about thought leadership,
Mm.
because the best way to demonstrate your expertise is by demonstrating that you're a thought leader in your industry, because you have good knowledge and can reason things out. What does it mean to be a thought leader, and how does someone? I'm going to pop in two questions because I know you're going to start. How can someone start to step into that role authentically from who they really are?
Mm.
How does someone become a thought leader?
Authentically, that's a key word too. Yes.
The buzzword.
I think it does start from thinking through your short-term, long-term objectives, because on any given day, any of us could be like, I feel like writing, posting something on my LinkedIn, okay? But since we could be writing about 100 different things, we have to think through strategically. I mean, that's what I try to do. If I'm going to invest the time and effort to write something well, not just to write anything or to plug in to cheat with ChatGPT to plug in something, that sort of thing. I also think through and try to justify, here's why it benefits me to write about this, to say something about that. Okay. So first of all, whether you're even a university student right now, soon to graduate, looking for your first job or an internship, what have you, or you're a mid-career professional or above, right? To think through, okay, I want to express my thought leadership. Now, to me, thought leadership, there are different definitions, but I think anytime in your work or in your environment when people turn to you and actually listen to you and followed some of your ideas, opinions, analysis. Okay, so it could start with that. Okay, like if you say, I have strong leadership skills, how do you prove that? Okay, let me recall a time when I showed leadership and led a team. Now, but you're asking about thought leadership specifically, okay? On the one hand, I think, let's say right now, I haven't done this yet, but let's say if I wanted to become a thought leader in the brand building space, okay? Then what I would do this afternoon is, let's say I go to a leading publication, Brand Building Monthly magazine, okay?
Such a thing?
No, I just mean
Maybe you should.
get your subscription now. Brand Building Monthly. I would go there, okay? I would look for an article there that caught my eye, okay? I often say that put a finger on your own pulse, something that excites you, that interests you. Ooh, what a stimulating article, right? Did you agree or disagree? If you agreed, you can explain why you agreed. If you disagreed, you can explain why you disagreed. You can take a link to an article in whatever profession you're in, whatever field you're in, whatever field you aspire to be a part of. But I'm actually doing XYZ now, but I want to be in ABC in a couple of years. Why? Because I have great passion for, oh yeah, we'll prove that. Okay. So I'm tracking this industry. I'm reading this industry leading publication, or I'm following other thought leaders. It could be anything like that. And then you copy paste the link to that, so it pops up as an image on your LinkedIn, and you comment on it. You say something interesting. You try to add value.
Wonderful.
Okay? That's right. So somehow open a window, as I say, open a window onto your mind, open a window onto your heart. Share something drawing from your own experiences, from your own knowledge, your own expertise. Okay, it could be your own firsthand experience. Oh, I read this article and it reminded me of the time I did XYZ. Ah, that's clever. Okay, because it shows you have a finger on the pulse of that industry. I'm monitoring the trends within that industry. That's how much I care about it. On the other hand, in a very sneaky way, I'm also bringing up my experience in that field because I need to prove that I've operated in that space. Although I've been focused on something else, I always had this hobby or always had this side passion. Okay. So
But they
step
work
by step.
together. They
Yeah.
work, personal branding and thought leadership very much work together to complement each other then when it comes to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And at the heart of it is still the evidence, is still the credible, believable evidence to prove these things, right?
Yeah.
But I do believe that you can build up your thought leadership, okay, to start to prove these things, right? Yeah, so what I would suggest with a client, let's say right now I'm working with a client. Her name is Siamanda Chege. She's a Kenyan woman in New York, okay, mostly in New York. And she has a social enterprise, a fashion social enterprise in Kenya, okay? Now, of course, she has a self-interest to build up her business, but she's also employing and training 300 marginalized, mostly HIV widows in Kenya. So that's why it's a social enterprise. One part for profit, the other part is to have social impact on that community that's been hard hit by HIV and poverty. Okay. Now, when I was talking to her, I was also saying, big picture, big picture. It's not just what you're doing in Kenya, but you are also on the front lines of social enterprise in Africa. Okay. But I see you that way, but you need evidence to prove that you are. Okay. So, even one piece of thought leadership that we're going to work on, which is, you know what? Let's find the latest World Bank reports on social enterprise, either in Africa specifically or around the world. So, it doesn't have to be a magazine article from Brand Building Monthly. It could be, I saw this latest report from UNICEF. Okay, or the World Bank, or from the European Union, or whatever it is, okay, or about the US-China trade war, okay, and I've got something to say about it, okay, to express
Yeah.
my thought, opinion, right?
Great advice.
Right, with a link to something. It could be, I just saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that triggered some thoughts, some revelation, some epiphany I just had, right? But with her, with Siamanda, just as an example, I said strategically, you could position yourself to be invited to World Bank conferences or UN Women conferences. Why? Oh, and today on our panel, we have a woman who's on the front lines of social enterprise in Africa. Okay. And you know what would have built up that evidence is once a month, you could write a 300, 400 word piece, 500 word piece about some sort of trend, some sort of policy, something happened, or talking about your personal experience once a month.
Yeah.
Every Monday, the first Monday of every month, I publish something new in that sphere because I'm building up a body of evidence that then when I approach some speakers bureau or I'm approaching some new clients as an expert or at least a specialist, let them call you an expert, refer to yourself as a specialist, then you have a body of evidence. You say, for example, hyperlink, hyperlink, hyperlink.
Absolutely.
And now you're making a stronger lawyerly argument to prove your case.
Yeah. We have
See
a
what I
question
mean?
actually, which is from Myrna, which is
Yeah.
a really good question actually. How can someone reinvent their personal brand at 50 plus which can I just point out is still very young because I'm older than that. When shifting careers or starting a business.
Well, that's a great question, and I wrote on LinkedIn before about specifically how to shift career gears. Okay, because it's not that unusual that after some period of time in your career, you get burnt out or you discover a new love, a new passion. You say life is too short, time is precious. And again,
Yeah,
for Mirna, I say, okay, you have this body of evidence in your current career or former career. It does start with thinking through, right, where you want to go and why. And then taking from that first career, what is applicable? And sometimes you have to be creative. You might say, oh, it's a completely different field, but
yeah,
maybe it's not. Okay. If it's starting a business, have you ever shown some entrepreneurial spirit? Okay. Have you ever come up with creative ideas where others followed you?
yeah,
Okay. Right. So somehow to identify some of these things from your past, and we all have to be, some of us maybe too humble, too modest. Oh, nothing I've done is relevant to, or I haven't achieved that much. No, no, we have to be fair, because now we're also doing some even detective work, which is looking for clues of, looking for some evidence of. Let's squeeze out, to wring out whatever evidence we can find from what we're already doing and what we've already done, how to make it relevant. But Mirna, then I would say, okay, well, here's what I'm aiming to do. Here's, let's think through who's my target audience. Ooh, I would need investors.
yeah,
Okay. Why would someone invest in me? Why exactly? If I were in their shoes, why would I invest in me? Oh, I also want to create content that appeals to clients. Okay, then you need to prove the results of your product, of your service, to prove your results, prove your impact. Okay, that's another form of content that I talk about. On the one hand, I've talked a lot about essential proof. Okay. But for Mirna specifically, I would say, okay, now I need to start to create some of this some of this evidence of impact. You're starting something, especially she says starting a business, to start to prove your impact. I would also, Mirna, one thing that's also very important too, I would create what I call an origin story. Okay. An origin story with a focus of explaining this dramatic shift in your career. Okay. It could go something like, for X number of years, I was doing X, Y, Z, which I loved. You don't need to badmouth your former career, okay? To denigrate yourself, to say, which I loved because of this, that, and the other reason. But I had a seed in my heart, okay? I always had a certain yearning, a certain desire,
yeah,
okay? And I wanted to try, the timing is right for me to attempt now, or for me to switch gears and do X, Y, Z. Something that will logically, and it must be a logical reason, a rational reason for why you made this shift, but your backstory. Because then when they go to LinkedIn, they say you have this business, if it's sustainable jewelry, okay, but you've worked as an investment banker. I don't get it.
yeah,
There must be an explanation there for you to be able to explain. Okay, because then in your pitches to investors, it could be, for X number of years I was an investment banker, very very happy to be doing XYZ, and then you insert the hyperlink to explain what you did and the
yeah,
value you brought, right? Right. But then I decided I want to pursue a dream, a long held dream, and or the hyperlink could go there. Okay, where then, oh, it was a long held dream. They could click on that. Then that origin story could be on your LinkedIn platform, but you're using that as a piece of evidence, as a part of your own personal storytelling. It can go on your website under the About Me, About Us, Our Story.
yeah,
Okay. So that's why even working with Siamanda as well, on her origin story, that the origin story then goes on LinkedIn and websites and all that. But then you can even convert that into your own presentation if you're then invited to speak, Tell us about how you founded this sustainable jewelry company. Okay. It
Yes.
didn't happen overnight. There was an evolution. I'm going to tell my story about how I, as a mid-career woman, mid-career professional, dramatically switched gears, took a chance,
Totally.
invested in myself. Okay. And I'm sorry,
Mar-
go ahead.
Martin's put that he thinks that when you're over 50, it makes you more aware of your positives and focus on those. I absolutely agree. I mean, I did a big career shift. I was a banker for many years, and then
Oh,
I went into teaching. Um, I think that as we get older, we gain experience in all areas of life that we don't really necessarily consider to be useful. And as you said, it's about digging through your past and going, well, I did those qualifications and I presented to these people. And all of that kind of brings it together, especially those that are in coaching or leadership or anything like that. We have all these years of experience, which is just amazing. And I also feel that when you get to 50, for me, for sure, the confidence just comes. You're not so scared anymore of,
ideally, the confidence
of
comes with experience and wisdom, right?
yeah, confidence comes with doing, doesn't it? I mean, that's what I speak to my students about. Is like you have to, when it comes to language, you have to speak your truth and just be confident with it. So create your
And
do your articles about your thought leadership and things like that, and just get out there. And
and
nobody's going to judge your grammar.
you're right. You're right. And if I may point out too that I appreciate that if some of your clientele feel, let's say, self-conscious or overly modest, overly humble. Maybe they have certain hangups about talking about themselves for some reason.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of
And I experience this a lot with my Chinese colleagues and Chinese students is a certain culture of, I don't need to get into Chinese culture, but a certain culture of modesty. Okay. Right. And humility, which is admirable in many ways. But if you're applying for a job, hey, we're talking about facts. Okay. I'm not saying brag. I'm saying if say whatever you want as long as you can back it up
yes,
with facts, if you've got the evidence to prove it. But also one way to overcome any hangups and extreme modesty is to say, whoa, 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 empathy. Let me imagine myself in the shoes of the employer, investor, partner, donor, whatever. What are they looking for?
yeah,
Do you have that?
yeah,
Yeah, I do. Then you
yeah,
need to bring it to light. Okay, as a fact, as a piece of evidence. This is not about humility. This is about recognizing, no, I do meet that criteria.
absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay,
I do a lot of job interview training, and that's one of the things that I do is just imagine what they're looking for and explain how you fit in. If you don't fit in, maybe it's not the right job for you to apply for. But if
yes,
you do fit in, you will have all these elements of experience that you need to show them how they're relevant. Uh,
yes,
and
yes.
otherwise, but anyway, how
And
can
and
go on?
and that goes back to just to say, and then it all works together because yes, that if you've unearthed that, if you've illuminated that, and you have that documented,
Yes,
then you feel that much more confident
yes,
when you do go for something that it's like, don't just take my word for it.
yes.
Please visit my platform. Okay. There's a body of evidence, there's a foundation there to prove all my words right now.
So I'm going to ask you
Yeah.
this because you
Yeah.
have you're a very good storyteller. So how can storytelling have
Yes.
the ability to tell the story rather than just, well, I have this, hyperlink, hyperlink, hyperlink. You need to kind of weave it together.
Yeah.
How does storytelling help someone overcome imposter syndrome, thinking they're not good enough, thinking they should just stay quiet?
Ah, ah. Well, it is interesting, the idea of being fair to yourself, but even a question of accuracy. Like you said, if you do have these experiences and these skills, then wouldn't you want to be accurate to accurately describe yourself, that sort of thing, right? But when I talk about storytelling nowadays, okay, because when I first mentioned storytelling to my mother several years ago, it's like storytelling, like fables, fairy tales.
Made up stuff.
No, 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 no. No, mom, I'm dealing with strategic storytelling, storytelling for a purpose, okay? With a motivation here, okay? And to tell a story, meaning that let me think of a core message. What story do I want to tell and why that story? Okay. Well, first of all, I should say, who exactly is my target audience? Okay. Who exactly is my target audience? Why are they my target audience? What are they looking for from me and why? Again, serious empathy and EQ skills, not IQ, but EQ skills and matching, because I want to aim my content as accurately, as impactfully, and persuasively as possible. So that's who they are. That's what I'm aiming for. All right. Now, what's my core message? Okay. What's the one thing minimally I want them to remember or to learn about me from this story? Okay. This is strategic storytelling, especially I do it backward. When I talk about core messaging, I say, imagine once they walk away from having met you later that day, the next day, 1 week later. Oh, yeah, isn't she the one who did XYZ? Right? Okay. If they're going to remember only one thing about you, what is that one thing you want them to remember? Okay. That's my core message. All right. So then do it from the beginning. So core message, I'm inspired, I'm competent, I'm committed, I'm trustworthy. Let's say these are core messages. Core message, supported by credible evidence. Okay, how to prove that I am these things. Okay, and then taking that and weaving it into a story. Can I think of a time that really symbolizes all of or at least symbolize at least one? Okay, because then you can open that way with your story, but then you can say, but I'm much more than that, or I have many more reasons for why I'm applying. That's just one. Okay, so strategic storytelling, as I said, is storytelling for a purpose, but it does require some thought beforehand to really think through, not just to say what you want willy-nilly, but to think through why exactly I want to say that and how exactly might that resonate with my target audience.
Yeah,
Okay. You see what I
absolutely.
mean? And but also to be authentic, not just to tell them what they want to hear,
Absolutely.
right? But it must speak from the heart that this was a real example and I'm being fair to myself. This is what happened, but you're bringing to light the core elements and messages
Yeah, absolutely.
supported by evidence.
So I'm going to ask a bit of a question now because I wonder
Yeah.
where you see the future, the way that everything is changing now. With you mentioned ChatGPT earlier, and how
AI.
you
Ugh.
caught cheating. Um,
Yeah.
so where do you think the future of personal branding and thought leadership is going in the next 5 years? Where do you think we'll be in 5 years' time?
Wow. I haven't thought about. I haven't looked into my crystal ball for a while,
Really?
but well, I mean, certainly I'm concerned about AI and how overly dependent people are upon that, because then it's going to be ultimately it's all right, it's not a it's kind of a form of plagiarism of intellectual property theft, but it also does lack the authenticity. Okay? So yes, of course, if you're anxious about I'm not a very good writer, I'm not a very good communicator nor storyteller, let me plug in a couple keywords into ChatGPT. They spit something out, right? Oh, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Okay? I would still try to add your authentic touches to it, to tell a real life story, to humanize it for yourself. And frankly, I think that despite going back to your question, Joanne, that despite my concern about the softening of critical thinking skills, I do these two audiences I described before, the sheep-like people are becoming even more sheep-like, following even more blindly, okay? Unthinkingly. And but the critical thinkers who recognize, hey, media literacy, okay, I'm going to be ever more skeptical about whatever comes across my desk or my phone, whatever it is. Okay, so I do believe that all these companies and organizations, I've talked a lot about personal brand building, but I work a lot with organizations on the need, enough of the BS. How do you prove your results? How do you prove your impact? You say, we're a sustainable brand, right? We care about protecting the environment. or about not harming communities, whatever it is, people, planet,
There's
animals.
a lot of greenwashing right now where companies pretend that they're very good for the environment and everything else,
Yes,
and they're finding out, people are finding out that they're
yes,
not. They're quite the opposite.
yes.
So yeah,
And so on the other hand, I think people are a segment of society around the world are becoming even more sophisticated, even savvier about this could be BS.
yeah.
Where is the credibility? Where is the evidence to prove to overcome our deepening skepticism? Everyone's lying. Well, not everyone is lying. So how do we develop even those skills in media literacy to identify who is, who isn't? And simply put, it makes us work harder, as I say, work harder, intellectually speaking, to build up, start today.
Yeah.
Start today to start to build up that body of evidence, that strong foundation to prove you are
So,
who you say you are and doing
so
what you
that's
claim
very
to be.
interesting. Because my next question was, what one small step could someone take today to start building their brand with purpose, even if they're not ready? So let's think about Myrna with she's thinking about starting a business. What's the smallest step that someone could take if they're very nervous about moving forward?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
this step?
I mean, let's say it is Mirna, and I don't know what kind of business it is, right? But does she have any, Mirna, talking to you, do you have any sort of tangible evidence of this business you're starting? Okay. Even if it's, hey, today I'm working on my website. Okay. Right. And it could be, I'm going to take a selfie with my website. Okay. It could be my fingers on the keyboard, smiling and say, I'm so excited to be building my own business step by step. Today, I'm working on my website. Okay. Or look at this piece of sustainable jewelry I'm creating today. Selfie. Okay. But you use that as a hook to explain. Okay. This is now my 13th unique design of sustainable jewelry. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
today you could think through, where am I going and why? What evidence do I have right now around me? And we
Yeah,
all do. We
yeah,
all do have pieces of evidence that say, all right, let me write and not to overwhelm ourselves, right? But it could be 50 words. It could be 100 words. 50 words is 3 sentences.
yeah.
Okay. Right.
Mm,
Like who you are, meaning your skill set. Hi, I'm A and I'm doing XYZ, comma, because
yeah,
just to touch on your own motivations, why you're doing what you're doing, because then that will help you justify why did I post today? Why do I want to post today? Oh, because I need to highlight this or that and start to build my foundation of evidence.
you have a bit of a compliment, by the way. Who Sam said
Oh, really?
very
Let's not miss
inspiring.
that.
It's in the chat. You might take a
Okay.
screenshot and then maybe post it and just say, "I'm inspiring everyone."
And I'm working up a sweat here on a Tuesday morning in New York.
I'm
Nice.
just looking at. I'm aware of the time. I do have a final question, but is there anything that you would like to say? The final question is, what's a bad piece of communication advice you've heard, and why should we ignore it? I just thought I would throw a curveball in there just to.
Yeah. Yeah. Bad piece of communications advice.
Yeah,
It is interesting because people do talk about in terms of brand building and I myself am building my own brand. I'm building up my own global communications and executive coaching consultancy. Okay. And so to think through strategically each day, what am I going to do and why, and why? So there are people who advocate even posting something every day. And I would say, why? I'm not saying don't. I just want to hear some justification that do you have evidence that I was reading certain studies online, okay, that say if you post every day, then XYZ will because I'm a skeptical audience, smart enough, but definitely skeptical enough that I want to be persuaded, right? So maybe there's justification. I myself am now going to be moving into the YouTube video space, okay, which is I want to start. I have several scripts and I need to record 2 3-minute videos, one skill or strategy per video. Why, Michael? Why would you do that? Are you that vain that you're hoping to go viral or something? No, because as someone pointed out, Google is the world's #1 search engine. YouTube is the world's second largest, owned by Google, but world's second largest, right? So to be there could also be an opportunity to reel in clients, to build up my own brand, to develop my own thought leadership, that sort of thing, right? But just whatever you do, justify it somehow. Okay. And oh, by the way, I have a filter for how to justify it. Okay.
Okay.
I've thought through not just what do I want to say and why do I want to say it. Okay. Right. But even to think through, one filter is this piece of content will help me build my brand, comma, because this piece of content is necessary, comma, because. Finish that sentence.
You
Okay?
could do that with a lot of actions to help you focus your mind especially when you're an entrepreneur, you could say, I'm doing this because I'm interviewing people because.
Yes.
If we did that more, I think that would be
Yeah.
a really good way to focus your mind on what's important.
That's right. And I was just telling my 16-year-old daughter, who for now aspires to be a lawyer, I said, you know what? Then, with all due respect, you should also dig deeper with your own critical thinking skills. Okay. And I want to see, I've been a longtime journalism professor and coach too. I want to see that word because, comma, because that immediately takes us deeper and opens a window onto how your mind works, how your heart works. You're sharing what's deeper inside of you is comma, because.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Okay.
I'm aware that we are now rapidly running out of time. If you want to pop your LinkedIn profile for those that are not already following Michael, you have to go and follow him because he's going to be putting some tips in on YouTube very soon, and you'll find out through LinkedIn. I'm going to stop the live feed, and then.
Well, Joanne, if I could just say, because I'm in such a generous mood, if you'd like to approach me through LinkedIn, there's my LinkedIn, my website there. Connect there. I'd be happy to offer you a free 15-20 minute consultation. You hit me with a challenge, any of you in the audience, you hit me with a challenge you're facing, I will help brainstorm a solution for you.
Fantastic.
How about that?
With that, I'm going to say farewell to LinkedIn. Those of you in